looking at the North and its strengths, first and foremost, they have land to farmland to produce food. They have factories. They have a lot of factory workers. They have the most mileage of railroads and owned the nation's 97% of weapons, a population of 22 million people. So you can eventually see that they have the numbers. Uh, they have money, which could be used to buy supplies, to pay soldiers, and so on. So, what's the weakness for the North is that they have the difficulty of having to supply their troops from long distances, and that's not something that that's an obstacle, right? And the idea is that the reason for fighting is something that's a little bit abstract. They don't, it's not real, something you can really feel. Fighting for the union is not something, or preserving the union is not something that is motivational, right? And very importantly is that most of the generals, like I mentioned before, will end up in the South. So very weak leadership. So let's look at the South's strengths. Home field advantage. They most of the battles, most of the fighting takes place in southern soil. They the sense of this motivation, right? Of, hey, we're just trying to be left alone, and we just want to preserve our style of living. So that's something that you could eventually see. They're the ones that all they have to do is defend. They're not really attacking. The North is the one that has to pursue, because they have to go over the states that left the Union. They have superior military leadership. They're very motivated. They have a very concrete, very clear reason why they're fighting. And it's because the military academies are in the South. They have excellent soldiers. So let's look at the weaknesses of the South. Smaller population, so not many soldiers. So casualties could take a hit to the movement. Um, when you look at while there was a lot of plantations, remember, a lot of the plantations are cash crops, not actual crops that you could eat. So in terms of farmland, very smaller acres in comparison to the North. Not a lot of factories. In comparison to the North, that has 22,000 miles of rail, the South only has 8,500. So that's a big part of their weakness. So while they have experience, while they have a clear reason why they're fighting, they don't have the numbers, they don't have the industry, they don't have the resources to fight a bigger opponent, a more prepared in terms of weapons, leader, a group, and so that's something that is a big part of the weaknesses and strengths of both sides. So let's look at the actual fighting that pursues in this time. So the first actual battle that we can eventually identify is known as the First Battle of Bull Run. The North calls it the Battle of Bull Run. The South calls it the Battle of Manassas. I actually have been to the battlefield in one of my trip on my trip to Washington D.C. I was able to visit this battleground. Something very interesting for me. I'm obviously a history geek about battlefields, and so to see in the actual place where this took place, it's super special. So the Battle of Bull Run is the first Battle of Bull Run, because there's actually a second Battle of Bull Run in the same location by the this location. The idea is that Northern troops had, or at least Lincoln had, made up his mind that a way to win the war was a quick attack to the Virginia capital, which was Richmond. And so he felt that if we attack, we destroy it, it's done. They're done. We can go home and we're back to being the Union. But he didn't count on the incompetence, really, of some of his generals. One of them being McDowell. Even though he outnumbered Beauregard by about 10,000 soldiers, he eventually was not. His troops were not prepared to take on the rebels, the Confederates. One of the while they were fighting, the rebel yell is eventually enacted. Right, the soldiers are screaming to proceed to move forward, and the Union soldiers get scared and they leave. Something interesting about this battle, being one of the first major battles, is that people actually saw it as like a entertainment. They felt like this war was going to be so quick, they're going to go home and enjoy their families. But the reality was that after this first battle, people realizes people and government realize that it's not going to be a short war. It's going to be a long war. And the idea is that some people even actually brought out picnic baskets, and they sat on the hills and wanted to watch this war, thinking that it was entertainment. But soon enough, after the fighting, they realized how strong the Confederate cry for freedom was, and they realized that this was going to be a longer war. So Lincoln, eventually dissatisfied with McDowell, he replaces him with McClellan. McClellan, more of a strategist, more very precise planner. He's able to locate several troops into the South and be able to attack Lee, to take over Richmond. But just like in many of his other endeavors, he does not press the South. He does not, even when he has them pinned, he does not. He doesn't proceed. Like, he doesn't go for the kill. It's like he feels like he's winning, so he lets off, and eventually allows the South, the Confederates, to regroup, recharge, and continue fighting. So that's one of the things that was a problem with McClellan. At the second Battle of Bull Run, you begin to see the strategy of Lee and his expertise as a general, being able to command so many forces and being able to take on victories. And a part of it was his ingenuity, and part of it was the some of the incompetence by the Union generals, such as McClellan. But one of those situations takes place where McClellan actually is able to have the plans, the orders by Lee for his troops. They fall in his hands, and instead of being able to plan something and execute and really land a big blow to the Southern troops, he's unable to do it. He doesn't capitalize on this advantage that he has, and eventually allows for Lee to continue fighting and just grow bigger. One of the things that you see is that uh, Lee is able to show his strategy, and by doing so, right, they eventually meet at one of the biggest of battles, or the bloodiest of battles, at Antietam. He eventually Lee comes into the battle with 50,000 soldiers. McClellan with 85,000 soldiers. They meet at Antietam on September 17, and The fighting eventually goes down in history, and it is still to this day the bloodiest battle, one day battle of the United States history. Because in total, 7,800 are dead within this day. One of the turning points of Antietam really was McClellan's inability to once again proceed and go for the kill. One of the reasons why he doesn't proceed is because he's just shocked by the death that he's seen, and he does not proceed in defeating Lee at Antietam, and so you can eventually call it a tie, a stalemate. There's no real winner within these two individuals, but very important to know that um, while Lincoln is calling it a win, he's literally angered at McClellan for not going for the kill, and really could have been a a a decision, right? It could have been by attacking Lee and destroying Lee and defeating Lee. That could have been a defeating blow to the South. After the Battle of Antietam, Abraham Lincoln fires McClellan and is in search of another general. He eventually assigns General Burnside, and he eventually plays out to be a very aggressive general, but not so competent as McClellan, and eventually resigns from the post, leaving Lincoln to assign the position to Joseph Fighting Joe Hooker. But even though there was instability in the commanding general position, there were other generals in the north that were eventually providing the victories for the North. One of those being Ulysses Grant. General Ulysses Grant is able to take control and secure the different the Mississippi Valley locations, regions, the Ohio River Valley location. So these are all again locations that are needed for transportation because they're by rivers. So Grant is able to show, right, that he's capable of commanding troops and able to be very persistent. Who, in a sense, this is what Lincoln is looking for: a general that he's relentless in his attacks, even not caring for the amount of troops and casualties. He's more aware of a victory. He wants the victory, which eventually, cuts the eye of Lincoln, and eventually later on makes him the commanding general. Another general that is sees some victory is General David G. Farragut, who eventually strikes a heavy hit to the Confederacy by capturing New Orleans. It's the financial city, it's the largest city. So by taking just New Orleans, and by taking New Orleans, you're taking the port of New Orleans, which is also very important. So for the North, for the Union, the efforts of Grant and Farragut eventually expand and move them forward in with their victories. So when we look at these maps, right, you can eventually see the different movements by the different generals, and you see the different list of generals here. And the idea is that again, the very weak leadership in the general position, commanding general position for the North, and then for other generals in the North, like Sherman, Grant, Farragut. These are all generals who made an impact in the fighting that will take place. So these are just some pictures showing you the destruction that the first years of war eventually displayed. And again, it's just this notion that you're fighting brother against brother, father against son, son against father, relative versus relative. It just interesting to see what drives a society to fight people of their own kin.